So, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of underlying factors that have driven these challenges. But we're going to focus on these three that we at Celigo have identified as significant contributing factors to a lot of these challenges we've seen. But these also represent the areas of opportunity that you can address to help meet the challenges that we're discussing. So it's SaaS sprawl and decentralized IT, this what we call the emergence of a digital workforce, and the evolution of digital transformation, which is in some ways a de-evolution, as we'll talk about later. But how these three things have changed over the past, certainly over the past 10 years, but accelerated from what we recently saw, right? Because even before we all rushed our digital transformations by COVID, high growth businesses really relied on rapid implementation of SaaS applications. That shift to SaaS enabled companies to pick best of breed software, but with that, we generally allow the business teams to choose that solution that fit their need. And their decision-making criteria is defined by the business unit that's funding the investment rather than IT. And the way that shift happened, the circumstances that drove both the shift and the distributed decision-making around investment, that resulted in system and information silos and SaaS applications that simply don't talk to each other. And we have some data here from Salesforce, actually. Percentage of SaaS applications that are integrated are 29. And we don't have up here is the average numbers of SaaS for a mid-sized corporation. I see numbers from 100 to 300. The average is straight, but it's a big problem. There's been huge amounts of sprawl, and CIOs find themselves in a situation where the business isn't getting value from this investment, as Nick said earlier. They're not getting investment because the applications aren't integrating, and compounding that issue. Businesses often need to maintain additional licenses to those applications for teams that don't actually work in the system. They may need visibility. They may be the manual data entry. They may be the integration you're just giving someone access to do data entry, and that drives up costs and that diverts budget from higher value initiatives, and it makes the data silos even worse. And adding to the complexity of that challenge is the problem of shadow IT, right? Because even before the pandemic, as we had more and more technologically capable employees, millennials, Gen Z, that drove increasing digital workforce maturity. These are people who grew up in a digital world. They're immersed in modern interfaces and user experiences. And, as we really accelerated that during COVID, the older employees, and I say this as one of those many older employees, hey, if we were not technologically capable before, well, we had to catch up, right? So now we've got a work environment where just about everybody's got a significant degree of digital fluency, and they will proactively find and leverage whatever apps they need in the cloud to bridge the gaps left by company-approved applications and ensure they have the tools they need to perform their jobs as efficiently as possible. So, shadow IT, 80% of workers are involved in or using shadow IT, and I am convinced the other 20% are just lying. So, yeah, I mean, in essence, right, most IT leaders, most of you out there are faced with a workforce of hackers who will find and use whatever technology they need to do their jobs, to keep their productivity up, and to make their jobs easier. And to back that up, we've got some great data here from Gartner. There's 42% of employees have the skills, capabilities, background to be considered business technologists. 51% are technology end users, but as we pointed out, they're pretty capable. And you represent 7% of that workforce. And what are the implications of this, Nick?
So I guess as our resident millennial, I will speak on the differences. No,
yes, with the worst haircut of the three of us on this webcast.
Right, exactly. No, so what was really interesting is there's been a number of conferences that I've been able to attend, and this is a huge topic that's being discussed. Multiple sessions. I mean, I think this is probably the most diverse populace of workforce we've ever had. I think generally we've had anywhere between 2 or 3 generations worth of people, but today, the number of diverse workers we have compounded by this kind of, we call this either like the digital workforce. So either they're digitally native or they're digital immigrants. So the way that technology has had such an impact, I think, to your point, Dave, I think 100% of organizations are dealing with shadow IT organizations purely from the fact that as we add more and more younger members to the workforce, and then we talk about the digital natives. I mean, I've got my phone right here. I can access any piece of data I need for my personal life instantaneously. And that same expectation is translated into the workforce. And so if there aren't technologies or processes in place for the majority of these business technologists who are, end users or technology focused, they will find alternatives and they will find workarounds that work for them, which will create shadow IT opportunities. So I was actually just talking with a number of people internally about this. And I think that that's really interesting because you hit on this workforce of hackers. This can be an absolute blessing or it can be a complete curse. And I think it largely depends on how you as an organization treat your data and analytics strategy. This is why you mentioned it's one of those underpinnings, because it's so critical, especially now, to look at how you have your existing strategy and are you using the employees that you have the best way, most effectively, so that you don't create more opportunities for shadow IT. I mean, it's a really interesting time to try to start solving some of these things.
Yep, it's interesting times. So, and here my clicker is not working again. There we go. So I love this quote from John Moore. It's my new Moore's Law. People have definitely, digital transformation has become a buzzword, and there's just immense fatigue when people bring up digital transformation, but we all know that we've got to deal with it. And I think, kind of sensible IT people, or what we've been calling, practical digital transformation, the IT managers are moving to. So they're changing it up. They're not using the term, or they're using it and being practical about it. And they're shifting to things like shorter, focused initiatives, an emphasis on hyper automation, more agile approach. What Jeremy's done in focusing on projects that integrate existing IT systems in effective and sensible ways. So I think first, because Nick, for those unfamiliar with the term, what's hyper automation?
Yeah. So to add to the buzzword bingo, and we should have handed out the cards earlier. It's another term. I think the way that we should approach hyper automation, or what it should mean, is essentially it's a mindset. It's a methodology, right? It's an approach for an organization to identify, vet, and automate as many business and IT processes as possible, and figure out how to take out as much of the manual processing as possible. We call it automation first. There's hyper automation. There's many ways to kind of talk about the same problem, but it ultimately boils down to how do we get the manual out of what we're doing?
So, Jeremy, this idea of practical digital transformation, does that resonate with you and the Modus team?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we took a kind of a save the trees approach, where any of the processes that involve paper, get rid of it and find a way to automate those first. We started small and built from there.